So I think we got the motherboard and the CPU done.
Yep.
You know, and the RAM. I think we're good there. So graphics card. Basically, when you get down to hard drives and graphics cards, you're talking about how much money do you have left in the system build, typically, because they're always the last two things anybody talks about. They're always the two most often upgraded things.
Yeah.
So let's do hard drive first, because that'll like kind of give us the GPU conversation to be last.
Yeah.
So the two big choices these days are SSD versus regular hard drives, and then or if you pick a motherboard that has SSD caching, then you could buy, you know, a small cheap SSD and run off of a hard disk drive. We also have to talk about, you know, like multiple disks, backups, like, so I guess we'll start with your other computers at home. Do you currently have a backup solution?
I actually use an online automated backup solution so that I didn't have to manage a backup solution. So
that's a good thing to ask you guys, because now I know, you know, they're probably going to set a backup for these files. I don't have to worry about speccing out, you know, a RAID set on their machine, which also means that I don't have to worry about, you know, buying like a WD Red drive that'll actually RAID correctly, which, by the way, you guys, if you're using green drives or black drives, good luck. It may work, or you may lose all your data when one of them fails. They are not guaranteed to work in RAID sets. They are not enterprise quality, they're consumer quality. So just keep that in mind. They're much more for striping. So I guess, you know, hard drive performance, I think anymore, building a system without at least some level of SSD is...
So I actually have a 256 gig SSD to start with. So in this case, actually won't have to do that.
Sweet.
So about the only other thing would be probably just throwing in a second, you know, 2 gig or 2 terabyte drive or something like that. So
cool. So that makes it real easy. You want to, you know, you probably want to go with a black drive for most cases. You can get a 2 or 3 gig or 2 or 3 terabyte black drive these days for, you know, a very reasonable price. Even a, you know, even a 1 terabyte drive is, I don't know, I think I saw one for like $60 the other day.
Yeah.
7200 RPM. So one thing you can look at too is, and I'll do some price comparisons, is there's actually some discs now that have built-in cache.
Oh yeah, I've heard the hybrid drives.
Right, the hybrid drives.
Okay.
So some of the hybrid drives are actually very cost competitive with the faster regular, you know, just 7200 RPM drives. So this is one point where I would say, you know, I'll bring the options to the person. They'll make the decision on which one they would rather live with. I'll give them the pros and cons of both pieces, and then you just kind of move on from there. That brings us to the video card. So this is the hardest conversation with most people, because most people, their keyboard, their monitor, and what's pushing that monitor is what they actually care about.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is where you're going to have to kind of figure out how good the video quality needs to be, how good are resolutions that the person's going to need, because if you build out this great system and you only have $100 left in somebody's budget, you're going to buy some cheap video card, and that's what they actually care the most about, right? So there's a large balancing game that happens with, you know, like, oh, I built out this awesome, oh, it's $900. It's like, okay, so now that I know, you know, that's how much everything but the video card is, where can I start cutting costs, right? So is it, do I buy a cheaper case? Do I buy a cheaper motherboard? Do I buy a less powerful processor? You know, like, where do you want to give and take in that price point? So I guess, you know, we talked a little about AMD versus NVIDIA. Personally, in my opinion, I have played some Minecraft, and I am less than thrilled about how the NVIDIA cards do in some of the texture mapping.
Yeah.
I would actually recommend an AMD card.
Okay.
Especially with they kind of waffle back and forth, guys. I know a lot of people are NVIDIA fans right now. you know, ATI, AMD used to be the top dog, and NVIDIA was the one everybody bitched about their drivers. Now NVIDIA is the top dog, and everybody bitches about AMD's drivers. It'll flip again eventually. I know people don't think it will, but that unit is extremely powerful for AMD. Even if AMD goes under, ATI will still exist somewhere. So they make way too much money. So this is where you have to look at, you know, there's always new cards coming.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of look and see, you know, how long is it, you know, how long does somebody want to wait? Do they want it right now? Can they wait a month? You can kind of look at like what parts are coming and like watch for sales. Especially with AMD stuff, there's the bundles. So, you know, the game bundles are very attractive because you may get a couple $100 worth of games on a couple $100 video card. Which, you know, NVIDIA, because their sales are so high right now, really not, you know, ooh, you can get Batman Arkham City or whatever the new one is right now. One game. If you buy a $79.90, granted it's a $1,000 video card, you get like 11. So, and they keep adding stuff all the time. So you have to kind of take that into account too when somebody says, you know, we're going to do gaming. However, it's also the age of the children. So maybe it doesn't matter if they're all AAA titles that are, you know, M17, right? Or M for mature. So, so take that into account. The thing that I would look the most at is really just, you know, how much money do you have to spend? You know, go up on like LinusTechTips.com forums and, you know, talk to the community there and find out, you know, other people that do rendering. You know, go ask a question. That forum's the best in my opinion for getting quick responses. Go ask the question of, hey, I have $250 to spend on a video card. I'm leaning AMD because, you know, they seem to be more toward what I want to use. I want to use OpenCL for rendering. What do you guys suggest, right? What kind of times do you see? And you may actually see somebody come back and say, no, the OpenCL is awesome, but look, for the same price, an NVIDIA card, you know, you're going to render twice as fast because of these technologies. So it's very subjective. It really does. It also depends on what codecs you render in. So, you know, it's a good idea, especially with video cards. Spend a couple of days, do your research, go up on forums, ask intelligent questions, you know, spell out your scenario. If it's, you know, my rule of thumb is if I'm going to go post something on a forum, if it's not at least 3 paragraphs, you shouldn't post it unless it's a very concise question. But if it's just like, hey, I want to do rendering, what video card do you guys think I need? Don't do it, man. Just don't do it, because, you know, somebody's just going to ask you for more information. You're just going to waste everybody's time, and then people aren't going to reply to you. Take a minute, say, I'm doing Minecraft videos. I'm going to eventually have Adobe. You know, this is the processor I'm thinking about, and, you know, here's how much money I want to spend. What do you guys think? And who has these cards? Because you're going to get fanboys on every site. It's one thing that a lot of us on YouTube try to fight. I know, you know, Logan and Linus, you know, the Newegg guys, everybody gets accused of being, you know, an Intel fanboy or a AMD fanboy or an NVIDIA fanboy. Like, let's be honest, guys, we just like what works. If it's a good price and it works the way you want it to, take whichever one's cheaper, right? So if you have 2 cards, one's an NVIDIA, one's an AMD, the AMD one's cheaper, buy the AMD one. The NVIDIA one's cheaper, buy the NVIDIA one, right? I mean, use common sense. Don't tie yourselves into products just because they have a brand label on them. Now, there are some things, like, I tend to be very biased in cases. So I feel that certain case manufacturers, for the price you pay, actually give you better value. But that's a whole different situation, because cases are very subjective, right? Just like keyboards and mice. Keyboards and mice are very subjective, right? They really depend on how you feel about those things, not necessarily the performance you're getting out of them. So I think, you know, I'll just do some research and I'll come up with, you know, a couple of options on video cards. And what I like to do is I like to build. Our lawnmower friends are back.
He's gonna drive by for us.
That's right. We'll get him in the background here for you guys, and I'm actually gonna leave this in the clip just so we can prove we're actually outside and that's not a backdrop. There he goes, mowing the grass. So
there's the other one.
Yep, there's the other one. This is why we moved a few minutes ago, in case you noticed the background changed a little bit.